let's just jump in because I know that you're a busy person. But obviously, October 7th, 2023 changed what it's like to be Jewish in this world. But it's funny because I'm coming at it from the point of view of a Jew by choice. And I don't know, like for me, like there's being black in America that I've had to deal with forever. But I wonder where, from your point of view, how it's changed in having always been Jewish, how you've always had to deal with some measure of anti-Semitism and what the difference is between prior to October 7th and now. Let's just start there.
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. I think for me, there's a couple of things. One is, so I grew up in a small town in Ohio with a very small Jewish community, and my high school was about 1,200 people, only a couple dozen Jews. So it wasn't a big Jewish environment. And as a kid, I definitely experienced anti-Semitism. I had pennies thrown at me. I had names being called. Um, but as I grew up, I think, kind of growing up in the 90s and becoming an adult in the early 2000s, I I always felt anti-Semitism was overblown. There would be people in the ADL and kind of other organizations that would always be um, speaking out against anti-Semitism and saying that it was such a major problem, and it didn't seem like a day-to-day challenge. Racism, some of the other isms were much more prevalent.
Right.
I think for me, October 7th, and even before that, right? Because it's been building
Right.
since Squirrel Hill
Right.
specifically, and even uh, it does feel that in some ways they were right. Like the anti-Semitism was lurking, and in some ways these were moments that it opened the door for us to see that their anti-Semitism is really there. That there are a lot of people out in the community that were maybe a little quieter about their anti-Semitism. You always knew about the KKK and those and the white nationalists, but that because of the changing in the political realm, I think that there's it's become more mainstream, right? And October 7th kind of even put that on steroids.
Yeah. In the initial days after actually probably the initial weeks, it seemed like the international community was, mostly on Israel's side. And then, the bombing, of course, just continued and escalated. And then it reached a point where it started to seem like even in Israeli news, there would be, a fair number of columns and opinion writers believing that it was kind of more political than it was about getting the hostages back. I remember that you gave in a sermon relatively early on talking about having someone come into your office one day decrying the destruction of Gaza, and like a few minutes later, someone else coming in, decrying the fact that they were not getting the hostages back, and Hamas needed to go. And talk about having to balance listening to all of those varying opinions and how you minister in that situation.
Yeah, no, it's such a great question. Look, I think partly one of the things that I've tried to do as a rabbi is to make sure that my congregation is kind of Big Tent. So our synagogue is very, very much a Zionist congregation. Like we believe in our connection to the people and the state of Israel, and we have the Israeli flag up on our bima up where we have our service. So we're very much Zionist, but like it also is really important to me that the diverse members of the congregation with different viewpoints feel like this is still their home. And so individuals might have different viewpoints and conflicting viewpoints, but to be open to that. And I think it's been really a challenge because I've been lucky enough as the rabbi here that I would say 95% of the congregation, maybe even higher, agrees politically on all the different issues, right? Like, we're definitely kind of a center left community, and Israel has been the first really main um, political issue that's really divided the synagogue. And so it is trying. I mean, ministering is, it's kind of the right term is to try to make sure everybody's heard and welcomed. And I know that's not in every congregation. There are certain congregations where those on the left are not feel like they're included, and those on the right are not included. Um, I do think it's helped us by having a little bit more of a diversity of views that we've allowed for more discussion. And sharing different viewpoints in a more in a safer environment that some certain congregations just have not been able to do. Um, but it's definitely not been easy. And trying to make sure that everybody's been heard and can share their viewpoint.
Why? Why hasn't it been easy?
Why?
Do you have a,
That's such a great question. I mean, I think a couple reasons. One, the Jewish, our rabbis tell us that in the Talmud, um, that there were these two famous rabbis, Hillel and Shammai. And Hillel and Shammai then had their students, so the Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, and Hillel and Shammai had completely different views on kind of where Judaism should be. Um, and we learn in the Talmud that like both of them were really correct in their viewpoint, even though they were totally opposite, but that the viewpoint almost always went to Hillel because Hillel would always, and his followers would always first listen to the point of view of Shammai and their followers and be respectful and then recite their viewpoint before they would recite their own. And Shammai would not do that. And it's really, I think it's central to Judaism. And I think it's central to me as a rabbi that I want to make sure that we don't always know what the correct view is, right? And so we want to make sure that we're having that dialogue and questioning and discussion and trying to come to some consensus, sometimes not. I think that's one piece. I think for the other piece is I personally struggle with Israel. So it's trying to navigate, I think as I shared, there's certain, I don't agree whole hog, I guess, not great Jewish phrase, but with either point of view. But there are things that I hear on either side that I agree with, right? So I'm trying to navigate that and always trying to be learning. And I just want us to be a place where we can be as big of a tent as possible.
okay. Well, let's dive into that a little bit more because you said that it's a Zionist congregation. What do you mean by that? Because I've discovered that there are many different definitions, it appears. So I wonder what is yours?
Yeah. That's the $64,000 question right there. Look, I think so. We in the United States, I think both in the Jewish community and also in the secular society, we define Zionism often very narrowly. And so Zionism to a lot of people is seen as a bad word. It's seen as agreeing with everything that Prime Minister Netanyahu or that the Israeli government is doing. That's one understanding of Zionism. I mean, Zionism really means a connection to the land or the state of Israel. Mm-hmm. And Zionism has been a part of our Jewish peoplehood forever, right? Like our prayers, when we pray, we turn towards Jerusalem. So many of our prayers mention Israel. There's just the connection to the land and the people. And even before the founding of the state in 1948, there were so many different understanding of what Zionism can be. I mean, there's political Zionism, there's cultural Zionism. There's the idea that Israel can emanate kind of Jewish thinking and culture out into the rest of into the world, to the diaspora. So it's hard to define. I know for myself, I believe strongly that there needs to be that Jews need autonomy. They need a space to call their own. I vehemently disagree with a lot of the policies of the Israeli government, and I think that is also being a Zionist is to be able to argue and to say this is we find that these policies or laws are wrong or are immoral, and that we need to be focusing on justice and compassion and navigating all those pieces together. Mm-hmm. So I know I didn't really give a great definition, but that's my thinking.
I've often personally wondered, like when we talk about a connection to the land and the people, and when you add in that Jews need a place of autonomy, how do you not end up, I guess, sounding like you're leaning more towards the negative or the bad definition of, do you know what I mean? Like, how do you,
Totally.
um,
Um,
where's the wiggle room? I guess like, is the better
yeah,
way.
I mean, where's the wiggle room? I think it's become as a liberal, I think it's become a little bit easier um, with the last, few years in terms of politics here. That like, yes, I'm an American, and I feel strong connection to the United States, but like I also vehemently disagree with the policies that are being put into place, right? And so I think it's I see it similar to Israel in that um, I believe in a two-state solution. I believe that
My
Israel should
next
be
question.
doing whatever they can to move towards a two-state solution and towards peace. I believe that Israel has, in its Declaration of Independence, that it speaks about our role and connection to those who are not Jewish, and that this is also a space where they're living. So it's kind of lifting up those values.
Right.
But it is a challenge, right? It's not so cut and dry, and I think that's why sometimes it's so difficult to even like define how we understand Zionism and what Zionism even means, because there's a lot of play when you actually have a political entity that is doing political things. Like how do you navigate with that when you disagree with a lot of the policies that are happening?
Yeah. Um, is there any kind of political influence that American Jews, the American rabbinate, can have on Israeli politics right now, or the Israeli government? I know that we recently
That's
had
such a
this.
great question.
I mean, it's the largest
Yeah,
population outside of
I, I,
Israel, so you would
I,
think
I
we
don't know.
could
I mean,
have some.
so the things that I try to do,
Mhm.
is, I'm part of the Reform movement, Reform Jewish movement. There is a Reform Jewish movement in Israel.
Right.
So trying to be connected, to what is happening there, to support them, to strengthen them, to do that piece, right? Because they are living there and navigating this moment, and they also have Iraq, which is like a political institution that is working towards the rights of immigrants and Palestinians and women and minorities in Israel, and so being able to support them in the values that we care about. I think here it's trying to make sure that we figure out the right ways to speak up. I mean, there's been rallies and things that I've been a part of in Washington and other places. It's trying to figure out like when do we use our voice together with other rabbis to lift up our voice? Like what petitions do we sign? But sometimes you wonder how much is it making a difference, right? I think also with the politics here in the United States, how much I feel like every day I'm getting another petition to sign, and is that really
Yeah,
swaying anybody's mind, right? But
right.
we still have to figure out what we can do with the people power to kind of make a difference.
It's a good point. It's a good point. I don't know. I guess from an intellectual point of view, like how do you see what would a two-state solution actually look like? Because they've been talking about this for decades, since before we were born. So um, for folks who spend a whole lot of time doing a whole lot of thinking about Jewish issues, how much thought goes into what that would look like? And if you've spent any time on that, maybe not.
No, it's a great question. I mean, I am such an optimist. I kind of grew up, I kind of came up of age in the 90s with Yitzhak Rabin and the
Mhm.
peace movement and
Yeah.
Shalom Achshav, Shalom, peace now. And so I am still very much like an optimist that we can get there. I think the challenge is on both sides. You need parties who really want to work towards peace, right, and
Hmm.
work towards a two-state solution. And as of right now, on either side, there's not the either the wherewithal or the individuals who have the power to move towards a two-state solution or a willingness. So what does it look like? I don't know. It's like a dream that I dream of, but I don't know. I don't even know. I mean, I'm not a political scientist, right? So I don't know all the ins and outs of what the first steps. I think the first step has got to be to end this war in Gaza, right? To try to have some sort of long-term ceasefire and figure out like what are the next steps. But it
Let
does
me
seem
ask you this.
pretty far removed.
Yeah. I know both Jewish activists and I know Palestinian activists who think in terms of there being just one state where the two
Yeah.
peoples live together. Is that anti-Zionist in your mind? And um,
Yeah.
yeah, is that possible? And to still call it a Jewish state? I guess I'm asking this from an intellectual point of view too.
So I have heard a model that maybe is a middle ground, which is having like almost like a Swiss kind of like a Switzerland model where there's
Mhm.
like cantons, like different even neighborhoods or little communities that would be a Jewish neighborhood or an Arab neighborhood or a Christian neighbor, like
Yeah.
different kind of groups that there could each kind of be this political power and almost kind of separate entities and states together. It's probably like a utopia that, never would happen. I mean, I think in some ways that was a hope of how Lebanon would kind of work. And some, I mean, not in the same way, but kind of in that mixing of different religions and cultures and different ethnic groups together. So I don't know. I mean, I think the challenge with Israel is the Israel that we pray and hope for is, or that I pray and hope for, I guess I should say, is a Jewish state that is a democracy that cares about all of the individuals that live there, whether they are Jewish or not Jewish, and all of those values, right? The democracy, a Jewish state, being welcoming to all the different types of people. If they're all in conflict, and it's making it much more difficult to like have have all three of those things, right?
Yeah.
I think it's easy to have two out of those three. The question is, can you get all three? And I think that's definitely the challenge ahead.
Personally, do you feel like the safety of Israel requires that there be, I guess, subsection of people? I mean, a different levels of citizenship or lack thereof.
Look, I mean, I think the fear right now, especially with the rise of anti-Semitism and with the Holocaust not that far away, is like
Right.
how many more Jews would have been saved from, Germany, Poland, Russia during World War II if there was a Jewish state where they could just immigrate, right?
Right.
Immigrate to. So
Right.
I think there is, and we see the kind of the rise of anti-Semitism here in the United States now. And like, how do we like, that's why we need a Jewish state for when those moments of things get really dire, that
Understood.
there's a place to go.
Yeah. It's interesting though because having been in South Africa at the end of apartheid, it's very, to me, I see parallels. I see where, it got to the point where the government in power was finally tired of the revolution and the violence and we just can't do this forever. And they finally were like, okay, let's try equality and see what
Yep.
happens. And
Yep.
I
Yep.
wonder, if there isn't some validity to finding more safety and just seeing if you can be safe together. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying, obviously, but you can't.
I think the challenge right now is, so like in any of these models, right, there has to be like that trust that
Right.
everybody's going to be secure and safe. And
Right.
like, I don't think either side feels trust or
True.
safety on the other. So like living
True.
together, I as one state, I don't know. But I think there's some of this. I mean, the land of Israel, and including the Palestinian territories, if you include all that land, it's the size of New Jersey, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to drive across from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River, it doesn't take you very long, like
Yeah.
an hour and a half. I mean, it's such a small place. So
Right.
even with two states, there has to be some sort of trust or
True. Exactly.
something or the
Exactly.
other's gonna, so it's
Right.
trying to
Right.
navigate that piece. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It seems like there's going to have to be some kind of drastic doing something different for it to change because we've been looking at this for 80 years.
I think so. I mean, I think about also the moments of the past of how we kind of moved like forward in the right direction.
Yeah.
And often it was the people that were often on the most right who said, like, we need to change direction. We need to
Yeah.
move forward.
Right.
You think it would always be the peaceniks or the left leaning
Yeah.
progressives who would push things. But you think about, Begin with the Sinai Peninsula
Yeah.
and like, so, some of these moments that have really kind of moved things forward. And it's often those on the left. So we need like Netanyahu to have like a whole change of heart, maybe,
No,
like to kind of to
exactly.
really kind of move us forward.
Right. All right. So moving the discussion to safety here at home. Um,
Yeah.
what do we do? It's not like, yeah, thoughts. What do we do?
Yeah. It's interesting. I was talking to some rabbis recently, and the amount of money, especially, we're a smaller synagogue, but the amount of money congregations spend on security guards is, whether it's tens of thousands or, I talked to his congregation where it's $500,000 a year. I
Wow.
mean, it is such a tax on the Jewish community that we have to, that the country itself, our government is not making us safe, that we have to actually have security guards to protect us.
Yeah.
And it does worry me that it seems like we're becoming more and more of a fortress,
Yeah.
to kind of trying to protect ourselves, which of course we need to keep ourselves safe and secure. But kind of navigating that piece. My biggest fear right now is, what is happening these last couple attacks, right? So the attack in Boulder just a couple days ago with the group that was marching, not even in pro support of Israeli policies, but on freeing the hostages, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, the two young people who were killed at the AJC event, who were working for the Israeli
Embassy. Yeah.
government, and they didn't the killer did not know that they were working for the Israeli government, right? They
Right.
could have been working for the U.S. government or
Right.
from someone else. It was a Jewish event, and the fire at the Governor Shapiro's mansion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All three of these, in just the matter of like a couple months,
Hmm.
have been linked kind of to Jewish events or Jewish people with what's happening in Israel and Gaza, and so that is scary because you asked me earlier, like, what power do I have to sway the Israeli government? Like, all right, maybe we could get out there, maybe we could sign a petition, like maybe, but like I can't change the policy. Like it is a separate state, right? And
Right.
the linking of kind of what's happening in Gaza to the Jewish community is that's a whole kind of new realm of what anti-Semitism looks like, and that's very scary too. So I think we're still all trying to figure out, like, what does that mean? How do we speak out about it? How do we make ourselves safe?
That's what I was
Um,
going to ask. Is there anything that can be done about, because it's logical to think that part of what's happening here is the belief of pro Palestinian, pro Gaza people,
yeah.
that if you're Jewish you must be agreeing with the Israeli government. So what,
Right.
like, what can be done about that perception? I don't know, op-eds? I mean, I don't what are you going to
No,
do?
I would look. I think getting out the word as much as possible, right? My view has always been the more kind of interfaith programming and events that we can do to kind of build relationship across a difference, to have allies, and for people to get to know us and that us to get to know them is like really important, right? That changes
Right.
hearts and minds. Um, yes, op-eds, other types of events. I mean, I think those are the big things.
Yeah.
I think just as much as we can get a ceasefire in what's happening now in the war, to get the hostages home and to just to end the fighting and to bring in food in Gaza, I think that will also, like, I feel like it's boiling over right now. So
Yeah.
that will bring it back to a simmer and make kind of calm nerves a little bit too.
How do we, I mean, because of course I've interviewed some people who've done medical assistance in Gaza, and their whole thing is, even in arguing to get the hostages back, like the starving of Gaza people, how is that helpful? Like, I mean, it
I don't think
seems,
it's helpful at all, right?
yeah,
I mean, and Judaism has always believed that, there are just ways to have a war, right?
Right.
And so in the Torah, we learn that you don't cut down the fruit trees when you're in war, because you need to allow the people that are there to be able to either harvest those crops or eat that food. Like, you can cut down other trees, but not fruit trees. And
Yeah.
so, look,
Yeah.
we like people are that, whether they're people from Hamas or whether they're innocent civilians, and I think a lot of them are innocent civilians, like, food has to get through, right? Like,
Right.
that is it, you can't use famine as a way to get the hostages home, and it's not gonna get the hostages home either.
Is there anything that you think that the American government should be doing differently to for ceasefire
Um,
initiative?
yeah, I think using their power to bring the sides together, to come up with a ceasefire deal, to get the hostages home, to get food there, to be much more involved. It was a little disconcerting that, like, when the president was in the Middle East, that he didn't meet with the
Yeah.
with Netanyahu and with the Israeli government. Like, I mean, so to use that power to, where we as a country we have a lot of sway and a lot of push. So, I think that would be really, um, really important.
Do you agree Hamas has to go for this to end?
I guess my question has always been, what does it mean for Hamas to go?
Exactly.
Like, yes, there's an army and a network and all that, but there's also people um, that have been radicalized because of what's been going on over the, like, I
Yeah.
don't think you can end, I don't think you can ever end Hamas, whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
You can
Understood.
end their military capabilities, maybe you can hobble them, but, like, there's no I don't know.
Yeah.
Personally, I just think that there's not a way to end that, and that it's not going to get the hostages home, and that's what, in order to kind of heal the broken heart, like, that needs to happen.
Exactly. I know you have to go, but is there anything that you want to say that I didn't bring up? I just wanted to give you a chance to say something if you
Yeah,
want to.
look, I think the only other thing is, I think about what gives me hope is, there are so many Israelis every week that are marching to get the hostages home. There was a Reform synagogue in Renana, just outside Tel Aviv, that had an event a few weeks ago to remember those who died in Palestinians and Israelis, and were working for peace, and they were picketed and things thrown at their cars, and, like, you really put in harm's way. I mean, luckily no one got injured. So there are people in Israel that are fighting for the values that I care about. That we care about a Jewish state, but we also care about, justice and compassion and peace, and trying to lift up those as well. So those are the things that give me hope right now.
Yeah. Maybe find a way to make all of that happen at the same time.
God willing. If
Yeah.
only we could,
God willing.
figure it out ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. I know, right? Thank you so much,
My
Rabbi.
pleasure.
I
Good to
appreciate your
talk.
time, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Sounds good.